Hi everyone, Mike the MC, bringing another self-care video. To struggle is to grow. Yes, I think that is a very powerful theme, and I always kind of reminisce about the ideas of overcoming obstacles, talking with people, but what about the internal struggle that you and I always have to face each day, living with our own actions, ourselves, and looking at our actions from the past, looking at the present, but then thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do about the future with respect to how I can grow and get better? But not everyone has that sort of mindset per se, in the sense that, okay, they want to better themselves. And we could say, well, wouldn't most people want to better their lives? Well, now we're going to go into a conversation about, I would argue, the morality of people, but then thinking the internal conflict within you and I, what is it that keeps you and I trapped beyond the addictions, beyond the external, right? What is our internal belief that really keeps us in the current mode of suffering? And you think, all right, maybe I may not be so cut and dry with some of my actions that others are witnessing, but maybe there's something inside that I'm protecting them from. Maybe I'm protecting myself even from some things I would have done from the past. And you wonder, okay, the internal struggles are a way of really living your life. And so I think we should give that a little respect in this moment of the video, because I think when someone else is living their life and they have the internal struggle, but they won't tell you what it is, got to keep in mind, you and I, we cannot be everyone's counselor, savior, right? Ultimately, it comes back to the Creator, but you and I, we not may be the best solution, the best remedy for another person. And so you and I have to accept that for those that we do help, that's a blessing, that's a gift. For the few that we do, all right, we saved a few people in the process, that's great. But with respect to you and I, with our internal struggles, what is it that wants to keep us stuck, paralyzed? Are we just looking at every action and thinking, oh my gosh, I can't get these wonderful things just because I know that I'm lacking certain skills, abilities, maybe even a little dismemberment even, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, yeah, I mean, our veterans, you wonder about the internal struggles they face, and you wonder, oh wow, how can we be more inviting to people? How can we be forgiving? But then people will say, oh, well then, are we then swaying too far to being too compassionate, right? What about religion, government, institutions, right? Isn't there a sense of dignity and morality that we have to uplift? I would argue for those who are injured in some way, for those who are been battle tested, I think the internal struggles should be valued, validated in some way in our recognition of their services for our country, for our people in service. And then people will say, okay, well then, does too much enforcement of the law, then is that an abuse of people over people in the cities across the country, as far as arrests, brutality? And I'm thinking, okay, those who uphold the law, they have a responsibility to fulfill. But the internal struggle, when it carries from their personal life into the outer world, that's where I think many things of morality are caught in action, and where we're caught out of line. And so I think in this regard, if I were like judge, executioner, and jury, before I even get that far, I'm just thinking, all right, there are so many wrongs that have been happened to many of us. And so if we are going to start to judge the other person for what they are doing to another person, right, look at your own internal struggle and consider how you, if you were switching in their role with yours, if you were put in their position, would you be that brutal? Would you be that harsh? Or would you be a little different? And so I would like to think, if we're having an internal struggle, and yet there's someone who truly is being evil, and yet we are in that position instead of the other person, even though we feel so much pain inside, we could still have a better outcome because we may not fall to the temptations that the other person is facing. And I think when you and I are considering the punishments of people in public office or people who have abused the law, I would argue that to a degree they have to find some accountability. Now, in the form of what way, that's still up for debate, but I would argue that for those who can correct the problems of those lower in the system, okay, that's one thing. But then if you're high up in the system, where's your accountability? How are you taking a responsibility for the people you protect? And then I know people say, oh, well, you can even look at your Pope and look at the things that he's doing good and bad. One thing I will say that I thought was cool where he wanted to have all the bishops walk on their bare feet, because it is an act of humility. It is an act of grace. It is an act of love, not forgetting your root, not forgetting your environment, getting outside the office, the AC environment, and actually just being outside with the people that you serve. When that may be the way to be accountable, at least if you're at the higher up as far as you governing the other people in society. I don't know. But I don't know. Share in the comments. What do you think? How can the people in the higher levels of society be accountable, and how can their internal struggles be in check so that way they don't spew onto other people in different areas and let the abuse, the corruption prevail in different parts of society? How can we address these factors? I'd be very curious to see what you all have in the comments. All right, everyone. Hope this one finds you well. Take care. Have a good one.